And welcome back. Now that you know how the roads are looking, in case anything changes where you are, please let us know. Be our eyes and ears, as Shiko said. Tweet us. Tweet we could go a long way. Tweet video even better at K24 TV. You can also SMS us alternatively on 21222. Let us know how things are in your area, and you'll let the rest of the people who are using those particular routes know which roads to use, and as we always say right here, which roads to avoid. My panel is fully in place and ready to jump into the big stories of the day. But before we do that, as always, let's look at the front pages of our dailies and then introduce my panel as well. We start off with the front page of the PD, People Daily. We ate and drank after killing city lawyer Kimani. Former police informant Peter Ngoge spills the beans on the gruesome 2016 murder of human rights advocate, his client, and a taxi driver in a case that drew national outrage. That makes the front page of the PD this morning. Also on the front page, pomp and color as Doha champions return home. Government and Athletics Kenya officials join family and friends in welcoming medalists, with focus now shifting to 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Those are the front page stories on your copies of the People Daily. Front page of the Standard, it's the same story right there. Inside police killer squad. 3 civilians, 3 detectives, and 3 hours of terror. Court stand as informer gives chilling account of how officers executed lawyer and his friends in botched cover-up. The story and the details therein found in the Standard. Also in the Standard, Nat shock as TSC kicks out 72,000 teachers. Union convenes crisis meeting to discuss monthly dues after employer cuts contributions from 140 million to 83 million in a surprise move. You can get the details of that as well in your copy of your Standard this morning. Front page of the Star, 3 chilling hours before Kimani murder. Police informer reveals to court how and who murdered city lawyer in 2016. Also giving a timeline as to what happened in that particular incident. Plot thickens as they talk about it. Victims were in a car boot all that time as police argued whether to kill them or not. Police informer reveals how to court how and who murdered the city lawyer, and the details are right there. Front page of the Daily Nation is the same story. Confession, how they were killed in cold blood. How a request from an administration police officers seeking help with a man pursuing him in court over a shooting ended in kidnap and brutal killing of a lawyer, his client, and taxi murder. That's the story in the Daily Nation, on the Daily Nation's front page. But also on the front page of the Daily Nation, history being made. Kipchoge boards private jet to Vienna as he goes to break the 1:59 record right there. Also travel record made in Kenya. It's the first direct flight from Kenya to Vienna, and that's from Eldoret Airport. Quite a big deal right there. Front page of the Business Daily, bank customers shun agents for digital apps. Survey by Infotrack shows that clients have high affinity for mobile platforms, but still want lenders to maintain physical presence, and that's what we're looking at this morning right here. As always, we'd like your views on the news this morning. Please tweet us at K24 TV. You can also get us on 21222. As we look at these big stories, we'll also be talking about the Constitution. Lots has been spoken about. Are we going to referendum? Are we not? Why are we going there or not? Is it for the politicians? Is it for the citizens? That's what we discuss right here and distill down to the bare issues of that, and have a very able panel to go through this particular discussion this morning. I'm joined by former Mandera Central MP and a person who was there as we got this particular Constitution to where it was. So he really knows the nitty-gritties as far as that process was concerned up until where we are. Abdikadir Mohammed, good morning. Good morning. We also have Daragwa MP and the chairman of the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. Good morning. Morning, Jeff. And of course, if it's a Tuesday, Joy has to be here to make sure everything is said as it is, no punches held back. Joy Mdivo, she's from the East Africa Center for Law and Justice. Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
We'll start off with the front pages of dailies this morning before we talk matters Constitution. And it's the same headline across all the dailies. A really chilling story, this one. And even as you talk about this that happened in 2016, recently we've had a record of the police officers really behaving badly in terms of robberies. We've seen what happened with the 72 million shilling heist in Nairobi West. The IG himself had to pay a bribe to his own police officers on his way to Machakos. Irony above all ironies. But when you look at it, we have the IPOA who are supposed to be there to police the police. Are they doing enough? Are we, when it comes to recruitment, is that where the issue is? Is it when they get into the force where the bad elements just soil the good? What's really the problem with our police force right now, police service?
When you look at our police service, if you ask what's the problem with it, it's one of those things that it breaks your heart. The whole of last week I was in Rift Valley, and we were doing a crackdown on betting machines. And the thing that I found to be most disturbing is that in most towns where we went, most of the machines actually belonged to disciplined forces officers. So when you try to get them out, you find you're being repulsed by who you thought were members of the public, but then you realize, no, that's an AP, that's an anti-stock theft unit, that's a police officer. And that really disturbed me, because I thought these are the ones we are relying on to enforce the law, but they are the very ones who are leading in breaking the law.
Right.
So I think there's a systemic problem. It started a way back when we had this culture of wezi kulala njaka moko na crown. So you used to help yourself with the crown. But it's gotten to a place where criminal elements actually get into service with the sole purpose of using the crown for their own ends. And so by the time you get there, you're getting there with an end in mind. And I think that's part of the problem where we have rogue police officers who know they do not face consequences. So if they face consequences, they can make their way around it.
Right.
But over and above that, like what we are seeing with this Willie Kimani case, is just people who get to a place where power gets to your head. Because when you read this account, it's people who, you get to a place where you think you can get away with anything. You play God, and you forget that you're still human. And I think that's part of the problem. So is it the problem that recruitment? People have said that thing of 32 teeth is not sufficient. Right. But I think that when you have police officers who have a heart, they don't have to be brilliant. They just have to be human. And they just have to know what is right and what is wrong. You can have anybody serving on the police force effectively. So where we are right now as a country, we have a systemic rot. We have a socialization problem, such that when you have a place of authority, you just think of how you're going to use it to better yourself. And it's very unfortunate, because it used to be utumishi kwa wote. Now they're loading it over everybody, and that's ridiculous.
Honorable Kioni, I'll let you weigh in on this as well, because we're looking at a situation where, okay, fine, we've started on the police service reforms in terms of their standards of living and things that have been a real issue, you know, because police officers will talk about, okay, fine, you want me to stand at traffic, not pick a bribe, but I'm going back to a tin house that I'm sharing with 2 other families. Clearly there are issues there. We're now addressing this. But is this enough in terms of the rot that we're talking about and what we are seeing coming to the fore every single time in different spaces in terms of writing the police service?
Thank you. It's a really difficult.
It's a chilling story, this
You
one.
can't even read these papers. I'm trying to open them, but all of them
It's the same headline, other than the Business Daily.
Yes, and it is really a bad thing for us as a country. But I think we may want to complain about the standard of living and the way the police officers are being treated and all those kind of things. But said and done is that what they are doing is not the correct thing. It is not what Kenyans expect. You wake up and you drive out of your house knowing that there are people who are taking care of what is expected of them. And we end up with a kind of situation like has been described, and it's something that we are seeing every day. So we cannot quite just blame the conditions, the terms of service, and the rest. I think there's also there's a whole structure. There's really something that has collapsed. And as I sit here, I remember with the chairing of Abdikadir, he was my chair of the Constitution, that Parliamentary Select Committee on the Constitution. Right. And we were struggling with 2 institutions, the IPOA and the National Police Service. And the reasons why we thought that they needed to have that constitutional crossing and protection was because of the weight of the issues. That at that time, we had the kind of things that we are going through, very unreliable police force, scary police force. And we put these institutions in place and gave them the cover of the Constitution or protection of the Constitution. And I think the question that I ask myself as the chairman of CIOC is that, are we living up to those expectations? Are these commissions really working? Did they quickly become part of the executive? And we are now back to where we are. And I want to say, I think so.
Do you feel that's where the flow in the structure is?
IPOA and the National Police Service Commission have lost it completely. Maybe we lost it by the way we appoint commissioners into those places. We needed people who can... It wasn't just meant to, pay back politically, but I think that's where we are back to where we were some 10, 15 years ago. Because I am telling you, I've been trying to open this newspaper for the last 15 minutes. I can't. When you see such a young person doing all these things that he did without, it's so scary. And that is where we need IPOA and National Police Service to come back and do their work.
Okay, let's talk about IPOA, Honorable Mohammed, on this one as well, because some people have accused IPOA of having more bark than bite. They say that when you look at the success rate in terms of the convictions that have come from there, really wanting, and if this is supposed to be an institution that saves us from what we are seeing, faith probably not as much as should be there. Should we reconstitute that particular body, or what should we do now with the learnings that we have so far?
Thank you. I think, as Mheshimiwa Kioni said, the idea with IPOA and the Police Service Commission was to overhaul our policing service, move it from a force to a service. Remember, during the Moi regime and beyond, part of the biggest problem with our law enforcement was the police force itself. Of course, they didn't have a lot of equipment and stuff, but the structure was also, as the good lady said, structure was also a problem. The reforms really haven't taken hold. And we haven't, as a country, allowed them to take hold. It's not just the police service. It's the executive actually has very seriously interfered with the running of that commission and the IPOA and the Human Rights Commission. The rest of the system completely closes out IPOA and the Human Rights Commission. And the Police Service Commission essentially has been stymied. It really doesn't work. So the reforms have not taken place. So for example, there are structural issues on who is in charge of the... Ideally, it should have been the Police Service Commission. But the IG and the old structure and the ministry have come in very strongly and really run the police right now. It's not the commission. The commission is essentially irrelevant. IPOA is supposed to come back if there are complaints, and there are very many complaints. The idea was that you have an institution that's independent, that respects the police, but that is able to interface with the public in terms of police complaints. Again, we have not allowed that work. So really, we haven't had any reforms in the police. The reforms that were intended, the new acts that came in, have not taken hold because the reforms have not taken hold. So we have new cars, we have new vehicles, we have new uniforms, we have new infrastructure and new titles, and the administration has put in a lot of resources in the police service, but the executive has fought very strongly to take back control over the police service. And let's talk about that because one key theme that I've gotten from both of you is the fact that the executive is still holding on to this. How do we have them let go? Is it executive goodwill that will give us this, yield this particular change? Is it the citizenry that are supposed to force the executive into giving this change? Because people look at this and they're wondering, okay, fine, we thought this was our savior, but it's the same old. Like you said, 15 years ago, you'd see a police officer and you're afraid. You don't know what will happen, even if you've done nothing wrong. How do we get them to let go so that you can walk freely at any time of the day or night? Well, power doesn't give. I mean, you have to take. Laws have to be enforced. Almost every institution likes more power, more mandate. But very strong institutions can also be overrun. It's not just the commission, even parliament has been overrun by the executive. I usually refer to the treasury essentially running budget. So really it is enforcement of the laws. It is insisting that we abide by our institutions because they are for the good of everybody, including the executive. If the police service runs well, we all benefit. If IPOA runs well, we all benefit. But we're very short-sighted to assume I need to take control of this, so that somebody else does not use it against me, so that I utilize these arms. In any case, I'm a nice guy, or we are nice people as government. We're not going to misuse it. But in the process, because when you don't allow institutions to run on their own, you rely on people. And you will not have good people everywhere. And it's not very many bad people. It's just a few bad people, and you have the system in complete shutdown mode. So I think the issue is our reforms have not taken hold. We really need to ask ourselves, what do we do to go back to where we wanted to go to? And of course,
allow me just buttress the point a little bit. When we have laws in place, but we do not have a culture change as well, it becomes difficult. When you're talking about the police becoming a service, one of the things that we need to have is the police interfacing with the members of the public. That's how you become part of the community. In other jurisdictions, you have police officers being drawn from a community and serving that community. Here, you still have people, gather them, take them to Kiganjo, then scatter them across the country to a place where people don't know them. There's no accountability. Just think about it for a minute. If a police officer is a guy you grew up with, you know his mom, you know where he comes from. If he misbehaves, you can tell him, you know what, I grew up with you, boss. Don't give me attitude. Just do your job. Right. It's different than a guy who has been brought, maybe does not speak the local language or the dialect. So we have to think about how do we even get these police officers to work. Let me just give you a small interface with something else that's working, but is undercover. We tried to dismantle the administrative, the provincial administrative structure, but it still exists. It still very much exists. It's like a parallel system. But you find that some of the most effective places where you find excellent security, excellent Nyumba Kumi is working. You find Mzee wa Mtaa is a very strong and powerful force in the community. You find the community themselves, the way they are organized, it makes sense. And again, this is something I saw in the last 1 week. We went to a place where the DC told us, here we've worked with Nyumba Kumi, we've worked with the chiefs, we've worked with everybody. If you find even one slot machine, come back and tell me. And true. We found none. Because you put a slot machine today, tomorrow the members of the public have reported you, the chief has come, has collected it, it's been burnt. Effective. You don't need any oversight from Nairobi.
Right.
But we have to come to a place where we accept, like even now when we're attempting to tell police officers, here's some money, go live in the community. But if it doesn't come from that area, he is not safe. The community can turn against him. So there's a question you asked about, maybe it's how we recruit, maybe it's where we get our police officers from and where we send them to. Same can be said about judiciary, for example. If I'm a person who's been sent to go and become a judge in a corner where nobody knows me, misbehaving is easy. Right. But if you're working in a certain community for a long enough time for you to develop a reputation, and you know if I misbehave here, I'm going home, I'm not being given a transfer to another place where they don't know me, then you've got people who are more invested in doing the right thing. Okay. So there's some of those things which we can do in addition to the law that can force a culture change in these institutions. Okay,
Honorable Kimani, you wanted to jump on that?
Yeah, I was perhaps captured already. But what I wanted to say is that other than perhaps what we are seeing, the issue, I think there is somewhere we dropped the ball. Because I cannot see what new laws and rules we are going to put in place. We have institutions that literally they were not even given an opportunity to operate. Immediately we put it on paper. It's like there were people who quickly made sure that you go crossing or struggling every of these institutions. And we now have gotten, and I know it's what you want us to speak perhaps in a few minutes, but we now have again been captured by the need to amend the constitution. Amending a constitution that you have not even implemented. Like if we had allowed IPOA and the National Police Service to do what we expected them to do, this kind of rogue officers would have been weeded out long time ago. Right. But we are back to where we are, and I really don't believe that it is reforms. It is more institutions that we need to put in place. It's just getting the institutions that are in place to work for Kenyans, and to make sure that what was expected of them is done. And these institutions were to deal with the recruitment, the kind of how are we going to recruit, all these things. But now you just get a few individuals, like he has said, comfortable in office, and there is a lot of campaigns when these people are aware of when terms are coming to an end than what is expected of them to do, so that you campaign and lobby for these positions. Once in office, dead. Right. The commissioners were in the National Police Office, National Police Service, and even those who are also in power, are the ones letting us down. And they are the ones we must hold into account. Right. And I believe, as CIOC, we will need to call them to account. They will need to come and tell us what can they account for. Okay. We are in that process in Parliament, where we want to see how much of the Constitution have you implemented as an agency? IPOA, National Police Service, ministries, and Parliament is expecting a report to be filed. And we will be going through some of these hard questions with
Right. And that's a perfect segue into what we'll be discussing after the break. We're talking about constitutional reform amendment. Very many people asking, we hear about referendums, but it's only the politicians who are talking about this. Where do I come in as a citizen into this process? Where is the question for me, and where does it address my issues? That's what we discuss after the break right here. We'd like your feedback as always at K24 TV. You can also SMS us any question you have on 21222. We talk about that and plenty more after the break.